Rain poured heavily on the cracked asphalt as Emily stumbled out of the car, her breaths jagged like shards of glass cutting her chest. Her eyes locked onto Michael, who walked briskly away, holding Sarah's hand tightly as if she had always been his chosen one. Emily whispered, "Michael, why?" But her voice was drowned by the thunder above. The betrayal was not hidden in shadows, it was painted under the flickering street lamp, for her heart to shatter in plain sight. Sarah glanced back once, her eyes cold, unashamed, and Emily felt the ground vanish beneath her. Her trembling fingers clutched at her chest, searching for breath, for reason, for answers. The night no longer belonged to her. It belonged to the betrayal that had stolen her childhood trust and replaced it with unrelenting despair. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emily sat frozen inside the car moments earlier, her breath fogging the glass while her hands refused to turn the ignition key. She had heard the laughter, soft at first, then sharp like a knife carving through silence. Sarah's voice, familiar yet venomous, mingled with Michael's, weaving into a sound that drained the air from Emily's lungs. She whispered, "Not her, anyone but her," as tears blurred her vision. The rain outside became a curtain, blurring shapes, yet nothing could hide the sight of their bodies leaning too close. Every instinct screamed to look away, but her eyes refused, locking onto the betrayal unfolding before her. The warmth of trust that once wrapped around her heart was gone, replaced by the ice of disbelief. In that instant, Emily realized the world she built had already begun to collapse long before this night revealed its truth. The thunder cracked as Emily's door creaked open, releasing her into the storm she could no longer ignore. Her shoes splashed into shallow puddles, her body trembling with each unsteady step forward. Michael didn't turn, his laughter with Sarah slicing sharper than the rain that stung her face. Emily called out, "Michael, please," her voice fractured, desperate, but he only tightened his stride. Sarah's head tilted slightly, almost proud, as if daring Emily to confront what was already obvious. The betrayal wasn't whispered lies anymore. It was a declaration, a performance under storm and light. Emily's chest rose and fell in frantic rhythm, the storm outside reflecting the storm breaking inside her. Nothing about this was accidental. It was a cruel unveiling, and she was forced to watch every frame of her world being torn apart. Emily's knees threatened to give way, yet her eyes refused to close. Every flicker of light carved the betrayal deeper into her memory. Sarah's red scarf whipped in the storm wind, like a flag of victory waved over stolen love. Michael didn't falter, didn't look back, didn't grant her even the courtesy of shame. Emily whispered, "This isn't real," yet the icy rain on her lips proved otherwise. Her body shook violently, not from the cold but from the devastation swallowing her whole. The street lamp above buzzed and flickered, casting fractured light over the wreckage of her life. She could almost hear the echoes of childhood promises, her belief that love was safe, now shattered beyond repair. The night gave her no mercy, only the cruel lesson that trust could be stolen in silence and rain. Emily collapsed onto the soaked pavement, her palms slapping against cold concrete as rain pooled around her. The sound of Michael and Sarah's footsteps faded, but the echo inside her head grew deafening. She gasped for air, her chest tight as if betrayal itself had clawed inside her lungs. Her whispered cries tangled with thunder, words meant for no one but the night. "Why me? Why now?" she begged, her tears indistinguishable from the rain. Every second stretched like an eternity, each drop from the sky hammering down the reality she could not escape. For the first time, she felt the weight of absolute loneliness pressing against her bones. Her world, once built on love and trust, lay broken at her feet, and nothing, not even the storm, could wash away the truth she had just seen. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, the storm outside now replaced by silence that felt heavier than thunder. Her reflection in the cracked mirror showed eyes swollen from hours of tears, yet a stubborn fire flickered faintly beneath them. She whispered, "I gave him everything, and he gave it to her." Childhood memories of promises and family dinners twisted in her chest, leaving her gasping with grief. The betrayal was not just about love. It had stolen the foundation of who she believed she was. She reached for a photograph of Michael smiling beside her, her hands trembling before dropping it onto the floor where the glass shattered. Each shard reflected her brokenness, each piece a reminder that her story had been rewritten without her consent. Emily's chest rose sharply as she realized the pain was only beginning, and she had no idea how to face the next morning. Morning light spilled reluctantly into the kitchen, but it brought no comfort. Emily gripped her coffee mug with both hands, its heat failing to warm her trembling fingers. Michael's empty chair across from her glared like a wound left unhealed. She remembered how he once filled mornings with laughter, how Sarah had sat here countless times as a friend she trusted like family. The betrayal was woven into her home, and every corner felt like it conspired against her. Daniel's voice echoed from a voicemail she hadn't yet returned. "I heard something's wrong, please talk to me." She couldn't bear to answer, couldn't yet admit the truth aloud. Her chest constricted as she whispered, "They stole my past, my trust, and maybe even my future." The kitchen smelled of stale coffee and silence, reminding her that betrayal had made even the simplest rituals foreign. Emily walked through the park where children's laughter once brought her peace. But now each sound pierced her like broken glass. The betrayal echoed not only in her marriage, but in her lost sense of belonging. She remembered Sarah as the friend who once pushed her on swings, who swore loyalty, sealed by childhood secrets. That trust had been stolen in the cruelest way, leaving Emily to wonder if anything in her past was real. She sat on a weathered bench, her body trembling as cold wind whipped through her soaked hair. "She wasn't just my friend, she was my family," Emily muttered, her lips quivering. The thought gnawed at her. Sarah hadn't just taken Michael, she had stolen the safety of a shared history. The leaves rustled above, whispering the truth she couldn't yet face. Betrayal had hollowed her from within. At Daniel's doorstep, Emily hesitated before knocking, her knuckles trembling in the cool air. The door opened quickly, his worried eyes searching her face. "Daniel," said Emily, "I've been calling all night. Please come inside." His tone carried both urgency and sorrow. Emily stepped in, the warmth of the home clashing with the icy weight in her chest. Photos of Daniel's family lined the hallway, reminding her of the stability she had lost. She finally collapsed onto his couch, her voice breaking. "It was Sarah," she confessed, the words bitter on her tongue. Daniel's jaw clenched as his eyes darkened, grief and anger warring inside him. Silence stretched before he muttered, "I never thought she was capable of this." The moment confirmed what Emily already knew. Betrayal had infected every bond, leaving scars that would spread far beyond her marriage. Emily sat with Daniel in silence, the air thick with truths too heavy to speak. He handed her a glass of water, his hands steady though his eyes betrayed the storm inside. She said quietly, "I can't understand how they could do this to me." Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "It's not you, Emily. It's them, their weakness, their selfishness." His words gave her a fragile thread of relief, though it was too thin to hold her weight. She looked at him, eyes shimmering with pain, and whispered, "I don't know how to keep breathing through this." Daniel reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. His silence spoke louder than words. He couldn't erase the betrayal, but he refused to let her face it alone. For the first time in days, Emily felt she wasn't completely abandoned. Emily sat at the dining table, her laptop open, hands shaking as she scrolled through messages she wished she had never seen. Each line between Michael and Sarah was laced with the intimacy she once believed was hers alone. Her chest burned as she whispered, "All those nights, all those lies." The screen illuminated her pale face, reflecting betrayal word for word. She slammed the lid shut, but the truth was already seared into her memory. Her home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, every corner echoing with their laughter. She leaned back in her chair, unable to breathe, the weight of deception pressing down. The silence of the house mocked her, reminding her that everything had been hidden in plain sight. Emily realized the cruelty wasn't only in their actions, but in their ability to deceive her so easily. Emily's hands trembled as she opened a drawer filled with photographs, each one a memory now poisoned by deceit. She stared at a smiling Sarah standing beside her at college graduation, arms wrapped around her like a sister. "You stole everything," Emily muttered, her voice raw. The photos blurred through her tears, the inked moments mocking her pain. She tore one in half, the sound sharp in the empty room, yet it brought no relief. Memories that once gave comfort now clawed at her, cutting deeper than the storm outside. The betrayal was not only in the present but engraved in the past. Her trust, her loyalty, her belief in friendship had been shattered. Emily pressed the torn pieces against her chest as if trying to bury the pain, but it spread like fire, impossible to contain. Daniel's voice cut through Emily's spiraling thoughts as he sat across from her, his face tense with worry. "You can't carry this alone," he said firmly, his hand resting on the table between them. Emily shook her head, whispering, "I don't even know who I am anymore." Her words cracked under the weight of exhaustion. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes darkening with restrained anger. "Michael betrayed you, but Sarah's betrayal cuts deeper. She knew your heart, your secrets." Emily's body stiffened as she realized he was right. The pain wasn't only about losing Michael. It was about losing Sarah, her anchor since childhood. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to meet Daniel's gaze. In his eyes she saw her reflection, fragile yet unbroken, reminding her she was still standing, even if barely. Emily sat alone in her bedroom again, the storm replaced by eerie stillness. Her phone buzzed with another message, Sarah's name glowing across the screen. She hesitated, breath catching, before swiping it open. The words sliced like knives. "You were never enough for him." Her hands shook violently, rage and grief colliding in her veins. She hurled the phone onto the bed, her chest heaving as if the betrayal had physically struck her. "Why would you say that to me?" she whispered into the silence. The walls seemed to close in, shadows bending cruelly around her. Each heartbeat reminded her she could not escape their cruelty. Emily pressed her face into her hands, sobs erupting as the phone vibrated again, the screen glowing like a cruel reminder of the truth she could no longer deny. Emily walked to the window, rain streaks distorting the world outside, mirroring the chaos inside her. She pressed her forehead to the cold glass, her breath fogging the surface as her body shook. "Everything I knew was a lie," she whispered. Her reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. Michael's laughter, Sarah's betrayal, her mother's absence, all wove together into one unbearable truth. She was alone, abandoned by those who once defined her life. Her chest heaved as she clenched her fists, pain fueling the spark of defiance. The betrayal had broken her, but it had also forced her to see what remained herself. She didn't know if strength was enough, but she knew she had to keep breathing. The night whispered her torment, but in her trembling silence, she began to choose survival. Emily sat on the couch, phone buzzing again. This time it wasn't Michael or Sarah, it was Margaret. Her stomach twisted at the name she hadn't spoken in years. She answered reluctantly, voice breaking, "Why now?" On the other end, Margaret's voice trembled, "Because you need to know the truth." Emily's pulse quickened, her heart pounding like drums against her ribs. Margaret's words were careful, almost heavy with guilt. "Michael's betrayal isn't the first one you've suffered. I never told you about your father." Emily's breath caught, anger rising. "Don't you dare reopen wounds you left behind." Silence stretched before Margaret whispered, "He wasn't who you thought he was, Emily." And the lies started long before Michael. The air thickened around her, suffocating, as Emily realized betrayal had always lived at the core of her life. Emily clutched the phone tighter, pacing across the room as Margaret's voice cracked through the speaker. "The man you called father wasn't your real father," Margaret said, guilt dripping with each word. Emily froze, her breath stolen. "What are you saying?" Margaret exhaled shakily. "I kept it hidden to protect you, but I see now I only destroyed your trust." Emily's chest ached, her throat raw as she muttered, "You lied to me my whole life." Tears spilled freely, burning hot against her trembling skin. The betrayal wasn't only in her marriage, but in her very bloodline. Margaret's voice softened. "I didn't want you to hate me." Emily's heart screamed, "You already took my childhood away." The revelation sank like stones in her chest. Betrayal wasn't an event, it was her inheritance. Emily dropped to the floor, the phone still pressed to her ear, her body trembling. She whispered, "So I was living in lies, even before Michael." Margaret's sobs came through faintly. "I wanted to spare you the truth." Emily's voice cracked with fury. "You didn't spare me, you doomed me." Memories of childhood birthdays, her father's smile, bedtime stories, all fractured like glass under weight of deception. Margaret pleaded, "Please try to understand. I thought love was enough to cover it." Emily screamed through sobs, "You left me blind." The air grew heavier, her chest aching with betrayal layered upon betrayal. In that moment, she realized her broken trust wasn't born with Michael or Sarah. It had been carved into her long ago, the scars invisible until now. Daniel entered, startled by Emily's collapsed form. He rushed to her, kneeling beside her, concern heavy in his eyes. "Emily, what happened?" he asked urgently. Emily looked at him, her voice trembling. "My father wasn't my father." Daniel's expression hardened, rage mixing with sorrow. "She should have told you years ago," he muttered. Emily clutched his arm, whispering, "It feels like everything I've ever known is a lie." Daniel steadied her, his voice low, "The truth hurts, but it can also set you free." Emily shook her head violently. "It's not freedom, it's another betrayal." The weight of her past and present crushed together, leaving her gasping for air. For the first time, Daniel saw her not just broken by Michael and Sarah, but by the secrets that had stolen her childhood long before. Emily sat between broken silence and Daniel's steady presence, her body trembling. The phone lay abandoned on the floor, Margaret's voice faintly echoing. "I'm sorry." Emily turned to Daniel, whispering, "Sorry doesn't give me back what I lost." Her heart pounded violently as realization struck her life had been a stage built on lies. She thought betrayal came from Sarah and Michael, but the roots stretched deeper, poisoning her from the beginning. She stood unsteadily, her voice shaking but firm. "They all stole my childhood. They all stole who I was meant to be." Daniel's eyes filled with sympathy, but also fear. He knew she was on the edge of something darker. Emily's face hardened, the first spark of defiance flickering. Pain had broken her, but it also ignited the dangerous fire of truth. Emily stood outside Sarah's apartment, rain misting in the night air as her fists tightened. Her heart pounded like a war drum in her chest, but she forced her hand to the door. When it opened, Michael's startled eyes met hers. His mouth parted, but Emily cut him off with a trembling voice. "Don't you dare say my name." Sarah appeared behind him, her smile sharp, confident. Emily's body shook, but her voice steadied. "You both destroyed me, but tonight I want to see the truth in your eyes." Michael's lips pressed together, shame flickering then vanishing. Sarah tilted her head, defiant, her fingers brushing his arm as if to claim victory. Emily stepped inside, each movement deliberate, her rage burning brighter than her grief. Tonight wasn't about tears. Tonight was about confrontation. Emily stepped further into the apartment, her shoes squeaking on polished floors. The air reeked of wine and perfume, mocking reminders of stolen intimacy. She turned to Michael, her voice shaking but clear. "Was it worth everything you destroyed?" His eyes darted away, silence sharper than any admission. Sarah smirked, folding her arms. "He never belonged to you, Emily." "Not really." Emily's chest heaved, her breath ragged, fury simmering beneath her skin. She faced Sarah directly, her words slicing. "You were my sister in every way that mattered, and you chose this." Sarah's smirk faltered briefly, but pride returned quickly, her chin lifting higher. Michael shifted uneasily, but said nothing. The betrayal hung thick in the air, a poison that consumed all three. Emily's voice cracked, anger fusing with grief. "All those nights you swore you loved me, Michael. You were planning this with her." Michael's jaw tightened, his silence louder than words. Sarah stepped closer, venom in her tone. "You clung to him like a child clings to a broken toy." Emily's hand trembled at her side, but she stood taller, her voice sharpening. "Better a child than a thief who steals love to fill her emptiness." For a moment, Sarah's bravado wavered, her eyes flashing with something close to guilt. Michael finally muttered, "It just happened," the cowardice of his excuse slicing Emily deeper. She shook her head slowly, her voice bitter. "No, Michael, betrayal doesn't just happen. It's chosen." The room throbbed with silence, every second thick with rage and devastation. Emily's chest rose and fell rapidly, but her voice steadied with an icy calm. "I hope you both choke on what you've built together." Michael stepped forward, reaching a hand toward her, but she flinched back as if his touch were poison. Sarah's eyes narrowed, her smirk gone, replaced with irritation. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself further," Sarah snapped. Emily's lips curled into the faintest smile, broken yet defiant. "Embarrass myself? No, Sarah. Tonight I remind you both what you've lost." Michael's shoulders sagged, shame finally creeping into his face. Emily turned, her hair clinging to her soaked face, but her steps were steady. The betrayal was complete, but so was her strength to walk away without their permission. Emily reached the door, pausing only once. Her voice echoed with quiet finality. "You took my past, but you'll never own my future." Michael's face fell, his lips parting, but no words came. Sarah crossed her arms again, but her eyes betrayed unease. Emily's fingers tightened on the doorknob, her heart hammering, yet her spine straight. She stepped out into the rain, its cold sting cleansing her in ways their apologies never could. The door shut behind her, muffling their voices forever. For the first time in weeks, she felt air rush into her lungs as if she had reclaimed her breath. The betrayal still scarred her, but she had faced it head on. And though she walked alone, she walked with fire burning in her chest, unbroken by their lies. Emily sat on her porch as dawn broke, the pale sky painted with streaks of gray and faint gold. She wrapped a blanket tightly around her, but the cold seeped through anyway. Her eyes burned from sleepless nights, but she stared ahead, refusing to close them. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. She whispered, "I survived, but I don't feel alive." Her chest ached as the weight of betrayal pressed deeper with each breath. The world moved on around her, birds called, cars hummed, yet her own world remained shattered. She gripped the edges of her blanket as if holding herself together. The night before replayed in her mind endlessly, and every memory burned like salt in an open wound. The only comfort was the faint warmth of sunlight that insisted she was still here. In the quiet of her kitchen, Emily placed 2 mugs on the counter, out of habit. The second mug stared back at her, mocking her loss. Her hands shook as she slid it aside, whispering, "Not anymore." She sipped her coffee slowly, its bitterness grounding her in the present. Every corner of the house carried echoes of Michael and Sarah, memories now poisoned beyond repair. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles whitening with strain. "I won't let them haunt me forever," she muttered, though her voice betrayed uncertainty. The betrayal lived in the walls, in the photos still hanging, in the linens they had chosen together. But Emily forced herself to stand, to breathe, to remind herself that even in ruins, she still existed. It was survival, not yet healing, but it was something. Emily walked to the park where she once sat with Sarah during summers, their laughter blending with children's games. Now she sat alone on the same bench, her eyes fixed on the swings swaying in the breeze. She whispered, "This place belonged to us once, and you destroyed it." Her fingers traced the worn wood, searching for comfort in its familiarity. But instead, it felt foreign, as though the betrayal had rewritten every memory here. She hugged her arms around herself, fighting back tears. Families strolled past, their joy cutting like glass against her wounds. Yet she stayed, determined not to run anymore. For the first time, she faced the ghosts of what she lost without turning away. The pain was raw, but it was also proof she was still capable of feeling, still capable of surviving. Daniel sat across from Emily at a cafe, his eyes fixed on her as she stirred her untouched tea. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly. Emily shook her head, her voice hoarse. "I don't feel strong. I feel broken." Daniel leaned closer, his tone steady. "Broken doesn't mean destroyed. It means you're human." His words pierced the fog, offering a fragile thread of hope. Emily sighed, her fingers tightening on the spoon. "I don't even know who I am without the lies." Daniel's gaze softened. "You're Emily, that's enough." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they carried less despair. She felt, for the briefest moment, the possibility of a life beyond betrayal. The pain was still there, but so was the faint shimmer of something she thought she had lost possibility. Back at home, Emily stood at her bedroom window, the evening sun casting long shadows across the room. She whispered to her reflection, "They didn't destroy me. Not completely." Her voice wavered, but the words gave her a fragile strength. The pain still carved into her chest, but she recognized her own reflection again. She traced her hand against the glass, her face lit by the fading light, and breathed deeply. The scars would remain, but she was still standing. "I'm still here," she murmured, a vow to herself. The room around her felt less like a cage, and more like a place she could slowly reclaim. It wasn't victory, but it was survival, and survival was enough for now. The night awaited, but this time she was ready to face it on her own terms. Emily walked along the empty street at night, her footsteps echoing against the silence. The rain had stopped, but puddles glistened under dim street lamps, mirroring her fractured heart. She whispered, "I'm still standing, even if I'm broken." The world looked unfamiliar, yet every shadow reminded her of Michael's lies and Sarah's betrayal. She pulled her coat tighter, the cold wind biting her cheeks. Each step felt heavy, as though the weight of her past clung to her like chains. Yet beneath the exhaustion there was a flicker of defiance. She had faced them, uncovered truths buried since childhood, and walked away alive. Her body trembled, but her spirit whispered louder than her fear, "They will not define me." For the first time, Emily wasn't just surviving the betrayal, she was beginning to own it. Back at home, Emily opened an old drawer filled with letters and photographs, the remnants of a life that no longer belonged to her. Her fingers hovered over Sarah's smiling face, and Michael's warm embrace frozen in time. She whispered, "You both are ghosts now." One by one, she placed the photos in a box and closed the lid, her chest tightening with grief, but loosening with release. She carried it to the closet, shoving it into the darkest corner. "You won't haunt me here anymore," she said, her voice steadier. The silence of the house still weighed heavy, but it no longer mocked her. Instead, it was hers to reclaim. Betrayal had stolen her innocence, but it would not steal her future. Closing the closet door, Emily breathed for the first time without feeling suffocated. The phone rang, slicing through the silence. Emily's heart skipped, dread tightening her chest. She glanced at the screen, Michael. For a moment her hand trembled, tempted by the old reflex of answering. She stared at his name glowing against the dark screen, then let it ring until silence returned. She whispered, "I owe you nothing anymore." The room felt lighter, her decision final. That small act was a victory, a step toward reclaiming herself. The betrayal would scar her forever, but she refused to let their voices dictate her healing. As the phone dimmed, Emily smiled faintly through her tears. It wasn't triumph, but it was power, her power, taken back piece by piece. The silence that followed was no longer cruel. It was hers, and for the first time it gave her peace. Emily sat by the window, staring at the horizon where the night met the first hint of dawn. She whispered, "The lies began long before Michael, but they end with me." Her reflection looked back, pale yet fierce, no longer unrecognizable. She pressed her palm against the glass, feeling the coolness steady her trembling body. The scars of betrayal ran deep, but in their wake, they had left something unexpected: resilience. She thought of Margaret, of Michael, of Sarah. Names that once defined her, now shadows fading into silence. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they carried no shame, only release. She whispered again, firmer this time, "I'm still here." And for the first time, the words didn't feel like survival. They felt like truth. Emily picked up the phone once more, this time dialing Daniel's number. It rang, but no one answered. Silence filled the room, heavy but familiar. She lowered the phone slowly, whispering, "I've been alone all along." Her voice cracked, the final truth too sharp to ignore. She sank into the chair, the weight of loneliness pressing harder than ever. Yet there was no collapse this time, no scream, only quiet acceptance. The betrayals had taken much, but they could not take her ability to endure. Emily closed her eyes, her tears falling softly, her breath steady. The story ended not in triumph, but in haunting silence, a reminder that healing was not a destination, but a battle she would face each day. Alone, but still alive.